Welcome to The Jump. I'm Rich Bowers, and with me today is a familiar face, Charles Dunn. Good morning, Charlie. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Good morning, Rich. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. So let's just jump right on into it, right? Just recently, as of late April, Meta released Llama 3 on a wide scale. And we've actually been hearing a lot of praise for it, right? They're receiving higher benchmark scores versus some competitors, and they're keeping the model open source.
Hmm.
So, Charles, if you can kind of kick us off here by explaining what Llama is, and then maybe diving into some of the benefits like open source aspects.
Um, Llama 3 is an upgrade over Llama 2. Meta's large language model, and the big thing is that it was trained on more data. It was trained on there's two models,
Mhm.
as is kind of the standard in the industry. There's the smaller model that is going to be running on that's capable of running in more restricted hardware, and the larger model that is fully featured, capable of their enterprise scale solutions. The smaller model was trained on 8 billion parameters. That is just to say, the amount of data it was trained on. The
Hmm.
larger model was trained on 70 billion parameters. So, um, as we kind of move into, can we get these models running locally? Can we get useful language models running on local machines?
Mhm.
These smaller models there's going to be a lot more, development on them versus the kind of established features of the larger versions of these models.
Great information to kick us off there. So, basically, what you're telling me and us is that think of it as Meta's ChatGPT, if you're more
Yes.
familiar
Yes.
with that, right? It's a large language model. And some key aspects that it has is that it's free. There's no subscription piece.
Mm.
We're going to dive more into that open source aspect. But then it has these two sized models trained on 8 billion parameters or kind of data points
Mm-hmm.
and 70 billion parameters for the larger one. With the 8 billion parameter one, that's the one that's local, because this is something I keep hearing about Llama 3 as well as another perk is that you can run this locally, right? As
Yes.
opposed to, say, a ChatGPT or Anthropic's Claude, right? Those don't
Mm-hmm.
have those local possibilities.
I believe Claude has a. I believe Anthropic has a local model that you
Oh,
can
it
use,
does.
but
Okay.
but the big model of Claude, that one is not local.
Got it. And you may be right. I know Claude just opened up three different
Mm-hmm.
variations just recently,
Yeah.
including Haiku. So let's dive into the open source piece. So
Yes.
open source is a familiar term if you are in the IT space, maybe not for everybody. So Charles, if you can define that and then talk about some of the pros and maybe cons of it being open source.
Yeah. So open source basic is that the source code is open to the public. Anyone can look at it, anyone can analyze it, anyone can contribute to it, and anyone can use it without having to pay a license. There's certain nuances about the kinds of licenses that particular open source technologies have, but the broad gist of it is that if something's open source, it is free to use and anyone can contribute to it. And that's versus proprietary software where the source code is hidden from the public and only the organization can
Hmm.
contribute to that, can uh, put updates to that device, to that technology. So open source is good. I'm just going to make that blanket statement. Open source is good. It is better in almost every way that matters than having proprietary software. But it does come with but there are certain risks with allowing anyone to contribute code. You may have heard about the recent XZ exploit
Hmm.
that where someone almost compromised every Debian Linux device on the planet,
Hmm.
but that was caught. So the reason why companies like having their proprietary software is that they have total control over who can edit it. But in the context of Llama 3 being open source, this is kind of Meta's attempts to distinguish itself from its competition. ChatGPT, OpenAI, they're the undisputed market leaders right now. They have the best model. Their model is multimodal, while
Llama.
Llama is not. So, in an attempt to distinguish itself and potentially ingratiate itself with users, and for one other reason we'll get to in a second, Meta has decided to make Llama open source. So that is good from the perspective of giving people tools to play with it, and that lets the public, the users, develop on Llama.
Cool.
Which and whatever they develop, Meta gets to use. So that's kind of the selfish aspect of making a product open source. Millions of people are going to be developing free things off of their technology that Meta can then use for themselves.
I feel like we just got a class and a tutorial and open source in 3 minutes there. So just so I can understand this. So basically open source means that they're sharing what their code was to build the LLM. It doesn't necessarily mean that anybody has access to Meta's code in their, in their code, right? So just to separate that. And we have seen a lot of benefits from open source where users like you and myself or anybody listening here can kind of adjust features that actually relate to user experience as opposed to just the company kind of guessing. Obviously, fairly accurate often, but these adjustments have shown improvements on any type of product. We're not even talking technical, but products in general, right? Yeah. So do you want to add something to that?
I just want to say that I just want to make sure that the listeners are aware open source technology is the backbone of cloud. Like Linux servers running on cloud instances, the fact that you don't have to pay a license for those is what lets you scale in the cloud. Free and open source software is why, the modern world works the way it does.
So there's a lot of benefits there. And I like the way you mentioned it too, is Meta will use that data, right? This isn't a charity on their end. Again, realizing the company that we're talking about or any company. So while we're on it, speaking about kind of accumulating all of that data, Meta has embedded Llama 3 in its Meta AI. And the Meta AI is accessible throughout all their social platforms. So we're talking about Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, everything else there. So with this being said, is that kind of what you're referring to? Is now that is now at the forefront, it's pushed kind of in your face. If you used Instagram recently, it's right in the search area. There's that perk to obviously it's going to be a virtual assistant, but even just more and more data that they're accumulating.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Meta spent billions of dollars researching this, so they gotta, justify that expense somehow. So they just put it in everything. They forced you to interact with it, so that as you interact with Meta AI across all their platforms, they're gathering all of that data, all of your click-throughs, all of your interactions, putting that back into their data pool that they can train further models on, and really just augmenting, Meta's global spyware network.
There you go. And we've seen that actually the case, right? So if you're getting something for free, you're typically, your data is how you're paying for that. So last piece here as we kind of wrap up. And it's kind of is becoming a little bit of a space race with some of the larger companies with these models.
Yes.
However, there has been a new entrance, and that is Snowflake's LLM Arctic. Is all of this competition, let's start, normally it's considered a good thing, but is it becoming a little too cramped? And could it also be a bad thing? And if so, why?
So normally competition is good. Normally having pushing companies to improve their products, that's a good thing. But if we look at this industry specifically, we have the four market leaders. We've got OpenAI backed by Microsoft,
Mhm.
we've got Google, we've got Anthropic, and we've got Meta. And these are some of the biggest tech companies in the world, and also Anthropic.
And they're backed by Amazon.
Yes, they are backed by Amazon.
Yep.
So these models are going to be the standard. These models are going to be the thing that everyone is going to be using for their general purpose, and they're really only competing with each other. Snowflake is a data warehousing company. Their large language model Arctic is more specialized. It is more specialized for their business goals of data analytics, data warehousing for companies, for business data.
It's more
So,
niche, right?
yeah, it's a more niche. So,
Mhm.
what I'm imagining that we're going to see is that if these new, as new models enter the market,
Mhm.
they're going to be for something specific. Whereas the role of the space of the general purpose model has the four market leaders have already kind of cemented themselves, and they are going to be competing with each other. Who can beat the most benchmarks? And there is some debate in the field over whether the benchmarks are even practically useful, but that's another topic. So we're seeing these companies compete, and maybe just they're spending so much time, money, and resources, and physical resources in the world, the water to cool all these data centers,
Mhm.
to get incremental improvements on their models to very slightly beat the competition. So maybe in this case, kind of this particular market competition, maybe this one has some downsides.
Okay, interesting way to wrap us up there with that, right? I think
Yeah.
it's certainly going to be a battle of the titans at the top as
Mm-hmm.
they make those, and obviously utilizing so much energy, as you said, physically,
Mm-hmm.
and then the smaller competitors. Even though we're talking about Snowflake or say a Salesforce that are very large companies in their own right,
Mm-hmm.
but compared to when you're talking about Microsoft, they're small fish.
Exactly.
So I think that could be a good direction. We're seeing that with Snowflake. So Charles, excellent points as always, bringing a lot of details. Thank you for being here, and for the jump, I'm Rich Bowers. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.